Okay, my friends, good evening on this beautiful Tu B'Av. Chamisha Asa B'Av. It is the 15th day of the month of Av. Today is, as we're going to discuss in just a minute, considered the happiest day of the Jewish calendar. The happiest day, not one of the happy days. It's like the happiest day, which means drinking and dancing and celebrating. Oh, you see me. Oh, Baruch Hashem. Okay. So it's one of the happiest days, and we'll talk about both the history, why it's a happy day, and the energy. The energy of the day. What's the lesson? What's the message? What's the energy we can tap into on this tremendously happy day? But first, I want to share with you a joke in honor of Rick. Before that, first, thank you to our sponsor. Tonight's class is dedicated in memory of Yitzchak Tzvi Ben Yosef, his neshama should have in elevation. And secondly, I want to say hello to everyone that's watching us on Chabad.org, from California and from all over the world. Okay, so here is a joke, my friends. This flight from New York to El Al to Tel Aviv. El Al flight from New York to Tel Aviv. It lands, and the pilot gets on the radio as they're taxiing to the gate. He says, "Shalom, shalom. Let me be the very first to welcome you to Israel, to Tel Aviv. Thank you all for flying with us. And ask you to please remain seated in your seats until we get to the gate. There's an active runway. And let me be the first to welcome you to this beautiful country." So to all of you who are still sitting in your seats, a happy holidays to you. And those of you that are already standing in the aisle, good Shabbos and happy Hanukkah. So, with that being said, you don't get it? You've never flown with a lot of Jews. They don't follow instructions very well. So those that are still sitting in their seats, happy holidays. Those that are already taking the stuff out of the cockpit, who knows what the pilot knows what he's talking about? I'm smarter than the pilot. So them, you can wish them a good Shabbos. They're like, you got to explain the joke. Okay, next week I'll make sure to prepare. I have homework to prepare. So why do I say that joke? Because I want to be the first to welcome you to the Jewish New Year 5785, to wish you a Shana Tova. And if that's giving you anxiety and heart palpitation that already Rosh Hashanah is coming, there's already a Hasidic custom, if I'm not mistaken, from the Berditchever, I don't remember offhand, that already starting on Chamisha Asa B'Av, already starting on the 15th of the month of Av, to start wishing people Iksiva v'chasima tova, which means that you should be written and you should be sealed in the book of life, in the book of blessing, in the book of good for the year to come. And in fact, I heard that the numerical value of the words Ksiva v'chasima tova, someone wants to do this after the class, you're welcome to try it out. If we add up all the letters of the three words that you should be written and inscribed for good, add up the value of all those letters is the same numerical value as the words Chamisha Asar B'Av, the 15th day of the month of Av. So the numerical value of today is already the numerical value of the blessing we give, asking, praying for each other to be written and inscribed in the book of life. So let me be the first to bless you, to give you blessings, each and every one of you, those of you here in person, those of you watching us online, to be blessed with the Ksiva v'chasima tova, that the energy of this 15th day of Av and of all the blessings should come true in the fullest sense, with the ultimate blessing, not only of health and happiness and money and all that, but with the blessing of Mashiach, God willing. So, with that being said, and with the great honor and merit of being the first one to welcome you and to wish you a happy new year with a year full of blessings and success, let us talk about what makes today, the 15th day of the month of Av, such a happy, beautiful, special day. So if you're watching, if you're here in person and you have the paper I printed out, you're watching on my personal Facebook page, I'm going to share the screen and we're going to talk, we'll go read through part by part the different historical things. We'll start with the Mishnah. The Mishnah tells us a statement by Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Now, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel was the son of the prince, the leader of the Jewish people. He was a very, very well-known, respected scholar. And this is actually, I'm quoting from the Tainus, the Talmud in Tainus 30b and 31a, which is the very, very end of the Masechta, the tractate of Tainus, which primarily deals with fast days. But the end of the tractate talks about this fasting and the sadness of Tisha B'Av, the sadness and the five calamities, the five terrible things that happened to us on the 9th day of Av, which we just commemorated last Monday, right, and Tuesday. And then the Mishnah ends off with the following statement. This is the last Mishnah in the entire tractate of Tainus, where Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, "Laihayu yamim tovim liyisrael." there were no days as happy for the Jewish people as the 15th of Av and as Yom Kippur. Why? As on them, the daughters of Jerusalem will go out in white clothing, which each woman borrowed from another, etc. Now, I'm not going to I'm not going to really talk about that so much tonight, which is the celebration that took place. This is the last thing that happened, where people that had a hard time getting married, they would go out to the vineyards, to the fields, to the hilltops, and there all the maidens that were not yet married would come out in their clothing, and they would come out in borrowed clothing. So no one should be ashamed that someone else had what they didn't have, and the distinction who could afford a prettier dress and not a pretty dress. So they would come out in borrowed clothing, and the men would see the woman dancing, and they would find a beautiful girl. And many shidduchim, many happy marriages happened on this day, the 15th of Av. So let me also give a blessing to all those in the room that need a shidduch. Those watching online and need to be blessed to find the right beautiful maiden this year, or the right charming husband on a white horse. Should be blessed this year. Should be the year of the marriage. Not only you meet them this year, I'm saying you should get married. I know a good rabbi. If you need a rabbi, I don't know. Just a word from our sponsor. If you get married, I know a rabbi that. I have a chuppah and I travel. I tell jokes, and I can also sing the blessings if you need. I'm saying. I also dance, by the way. So I'm saying it's a good deal. Yeah. So I'm saying it's a good package deal. Anyway, so many of the girls will get married. It was a beautiful thing. But so the Gemara wants to understand. We understand that it was a good day where people get married. But why does Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel make such a radical statement? It's really a radical statement. That there was no holiday as happy for the Jewish people as Yom Kippur and the 15th of Av. So the Gemara asks, and now I'm jumping to the Gemara on page 30b. Granted, Yom Kippur, this is a translation of the English, not an exact translation, but it's a translation of the English. Bishlam Yom Kippurim. I understand why Yom Kippur is a happy day for the Jewish people, because it has pardon and forgiveness. And what else happened on Yom Kippur? Rick, what else happened on Yom Kippur? Veisnish. No, fasting is because we're on such a state of holiness. We're like angels. What happened historically on Yom Kippur? We got the second tablets. So not only were the Jewish people forgiven on Yom Kippur, and for all generations, Yom Kippur is a day of forgiveness and of atonement, but Yom Kippur is a day when God gave us the tablets that we have till today. I mean, they're hidden somewhere in the tunnel, somewhere under the Temple Mount, in the Ark. But we have the second tablets that were given to the Jewish people. So it's very understandable why Yom Kippur is one of the greatest, happiest days for the Jewish people. And yes, in many communities, Yom Kippur is very somber and very solemn, but it's still a happy day. The underlying energy is one of closeness to God, one of a sense of, it's not a dancing day like Simchas Torah, but it's a day of tremendous closeness with God. So it's a very special day. That closeness leads to joy. But, however, what is the special joy of the 15th of Av? So the Gemara is going to give 6 different historical explanations for what happened on the 15th of Av. 6 of them, besides for the 7th, which we already mentioned about the dancing and that the marriages would happen on this day. We're going to go through all 6 explanations. And if you guys are really paying attention and keeping track, but if you have a paper in front of you, you could help. Well, then, if we have time, we'll see how long the stories take. We are going to show a common thread between all these 6 stories and explain on a far deeper spiritual level, as the Rebbe explains, what is the true inner meaning and excitement and joy and energy of these holidays. Deal? Deal. Okay, let's go. The first reason you want to close the door, Michael? Because we need to close the door because that water fountain needs a refuah shleima. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So the first explanation for what happened historically on the 15th of Av is that this was the day on which the members of different tribes were permitted to enter one another's tribe. Let me explain what this means. The beginning of the intermarriage of the tribes of the Jewish people. So basically, when we've talked about this many, many times, let me just see. Oh boy, we got people who are showing all these nasty remarks. I love when people. 1 second, I have to block some comments on our YouTube for a second. Okay, so good evening to all those nice people that are watching from all over the world. It's good to see people that from from Alberta. Hello, Vincent, and hello, Vicky, and hello, Carmen, hello, Diane. Okay, so when the Slavchad, there was a man who lived in the desert. He passed away. His name was Slavchad. He had 5 daughters. I'll do this story quickly. It's not that dramatic and not exciting. Some of the other stories coming up. Just warning you now, there's some rated R exciting stories coming up. But this one's not so exciting, so I'll do it fairly quickly. Slavchad had 5 daughters. They fought with Moses. They wanted to have a right to inherit their father's property in the land of Israel. Moses takes the request to God. God says they're speaking correctly. And the first female landowners in all of human history, not Jewish history, in human history, were Jewish women. That's girl power, right? Jewish girls. And they have the land. Now, the members, the men of the tribe of Menashe, which this family was from, had a complaint. What was the complaint? That if these girls are going to marry out of the tribe, their kids are going to belong to what tribe? The tribe of their father. And when their mother passes away, the kids will inherit the fields of their mothers, but they're going to belong to different tribes. So land from our tribe will now move to whatever tribe the husbands of these women will be from. So Moshe accepts their argument, and he makes a law and a ruling that no one should marry out of their tribe. You should marry in the tribe so that land doesn't get lost. Okay? That means that no one can marry the other tribes. When the Jews came into the land of Israel, there was a problem. So the rabbi sat and they made they expounded the verse. And the technicality is not important, but basically they explained that this ruling, this verse that forbids the marrying from one tribe to a different tribe was only in a reference to that generation. It did not apply to future generations. And the day on which the court made an official ruling that once again Jews could marry from one tribe, the Jews can marry from one tribe into a different tribe, that happened on the 15th of Av. And therefore, it's a great celebration because we have an intermarriage of tribes. People were no longer limited to finding a man or a woman from within their own tribe. The men and the women could look for any Jew. It's like having online dating. All of a sudden, the pool got much bigger. They weren't stuck to just their neighbors. They could marry anyone from any of the 12 tribes of Israel. Hence, that is the historical reason number 1 for the celebration of today. Okay. What is reason number 2? Reason number 2, and by the way, each one of these verses, the Talmud brings, each one of these explanations, the Talmud proves it with verses, but I skipped all the verses because we'll never finish and it'll get too technical. So, let's go to the second reason. Second reason is from Rav Yosef, who said in the name of Rav Nachman. This was a day on which the tribe of Binyamin was permitted to enter the congregation of the Jewish people. Now, this, my friend, is a very, very crazy story. Has anyone here ever heard the story of Pelegesh Begiva, the concubine in Giva? No. I'm going to tell you a crazy story. Tanakh is full of crazy stories. So in the book of Shoftim, the book of Judges, the Tanakh is trying to explain the anarchy that existed during these times. It was a time before there was a king, before there was any central governmental leadership. It was a very chaotic time for the Jewish people. At that time, there was an unknown man. He was called the Ish HaLevi, a man from the tribe of Levi. We don't know his name. And his concubine had a fight with him and left and went back to her father's home. So he went to go find his concubine to go make up, and he's bringing her back home. They're traveling, and they come to a city in the territory of Binyamin. A city is called Giva. And this story is going to sound very much like the story of the angels in the city of Sodom. Very, very similar to the story of Sodom. They come to Giva, and no one in Giva will allow these people to be their guests. No one wants to host them. Finally, there's an old man who's also not a local resident of Giva, like in the story of Sodom, where it was Avram's nephew, also wasn't really a local. Anyway, a non-local person sees this person, and this man and this woman, he invites them to his home. The locals find out that these guests are staying here, and they surround a mob of Bnei Belial, of wicked people, surrounds the house. They want the man to come out. They want to kill this man. So to distract the crowd, he takes his concubine, his wife that he's coming to marry, to take back home because he wants to make up with her, and sends her outside so the crowd, the mob outside, could be busy with her, and they will leave him alone. She gets gang raped. all night. And the mob is busy with her all night almost till dawn breaks. The morning is coming, and they finish with her. They leave her, and she escapes them. She comes back to by the front door, and she's begging to be open. Like he said, open the door. He opens the door, and she dies right there in the doorway. She dies right there. He says, "Come, let's go," and she dies. So what does he do? He doesn't bury her. That would be way too nice for his almost wife. He was trying to make up with. Instead, he cuts up her body into 12 pieces and sends one part of her body to each one of the 12 tribes. And he sends a message: this is what the people of the tribe of Benjamin did to my wife. Look at how they treated her. An army gathers, representatives of all the tribes. This is 3 chapters of Tanakh that I'm telling you now in 2 minutes. An army gathers, and he comes with a whole poetic speech, how they took advantage. He, of course, whitewashes his own actions as if he's innocent. He blames Binyamin, and they come demanding of Binyamin, the tribe of Benjamin, to give forth those that have been involved in the horrific rape and murder of this woman to be put to justice. The tribe of Benjamin refuses to be judged by any other tribe. Again, this was a time of anarchy. There was no king, there was no rulers. Every tribe did, as the end of chapter 121 says, Ish kol hayashav b'einav tasa, was a time when each man did what was right in his own eyes. There was no judge. There was no authority. There was no, a sense of, direction.
We didn't have Torah.
We had a Torah, but everyone just did what they wanted. So they felt, the members of the tribe of Benjamin felt, who are you from the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Reuben, to come and tell me what I should do with justice in my court? We'll deal with our own justice. No other tribe has the right to come and tell us how to deal with our own people. It was a matter of pride. It became a whole, we're not going to let you come in. So all of a sudden, these 12 tribes that couldn't muster an army to unite, to fight against their enemies, suddenly found an army to fight against their own. Again, this is a very crazy story. We could do a whole class on this story. It would be a very painful class because it's a very painful story. It's a sad story. And they come to wage war against Binyamin to avenge this girl that had been raped and killed. And they have a war, and they lose a war. They lose 20,000 men, and they have another war. They lose another 18,000 men. They have another war, and they completely destroy the entire tribe of Benjamin. They kill every single man, woman, and child. They destroy, obliterate the tribe. Except, this is a scary story. I know. We have nightmares tonight, I see. Except for 600 men who were hiding in a rock. I just read it earlier this afternoon. Remainim, in a rock of Remainim. They found a rock, a cave, whatever, in Remainim, and they were hiding there. 600 men were hiding, and they made a little fortress for themselves. It wasn't a rock, it was like a fortress, and that's where 600 men were surviving.
So they let their wives and their children all be murdered, and they protected themselves.
I don't know that they were married men. They could have been young men that were yeshiva students or wherever. They're not necessarily were they married. In fact, they weren't married because they had to get married and have... They were young. They were the army. There was an army. Wasn't family. It was an army. A group of people that were fighting. So they're hiding in Salah Remainim, in this place in Remainim. Meantime, the Jewish people all of a sudden realize, what do we do over here? We destroyed one of the tribes of Israel. Whoops, that wasn't a good idea. And now we're down the tribe. So they wanted to help rebuild the tribe of Benjamin. They were very hot-headed. You could tell this was a crazy, as I said already, I'll repeat it. It was a time of anarchy. Anarchy is very dangerous for many, many, many reasons, and crazy, stupid things happen during anarchy. Let's just leave it at that. So now they realize we did a bad idea. We just killed one of the tribes of Benjamin. That's not a good thing. We need to rebuild them. The problem is they had made an oath. They made an oath that no man would give his daughters to the tribe of Benjamin before the war. That was even before where they were trying to politically coerce Benjamin to submit to the authority of the other tribes to judge the men of Benjamin that had been involved in this mob to kill this woman. Okay. It's not a famous story. Carmen says she never heard the story. This is not a story they teach you in Hebrew school. I promise you that. It's not part of the rabbi's usual Rosh Hashanah sermons. It's in the book of Judges, chapter 19, 20, and 21. I think it's Judges. Shmuel or Shaftim. I think it's Shaftim. Shaftim 19, 20, 21. 3 chapters long. Anyway, so what should they do? So they find one city that had not been part of the oath. They found one city that had not been part of the war. They go to war against a city that hadn't joined them in the war, And from there, they take 400 unmarried women and they bring them to these 600 men in Rimainim. But it's not enough. It's only 400 women, 600 men, and they're trying to rebuild a whole tribe now. So they made up a thing with the men that were on the 15th of Av that they would allow that the girls, they couldn't give their daughters in marriage because they made an oath not to give their daughters in marriage. So on that day, the women would go out to dance with white dresses, and the men from Binyamin that weren't married could go on the hilltops to look, and if they see a beautiful girl, they could go and take the girl for marriage on their own, meaning they wouldn't like formally be given the girl, they could go take the girl, and this way they wouldn't be in violation of the oath. Anyway, that's how the oath that was made against the tribe of Benjamin was de facto, ended. And once again, Jews from other tribes were allowed to marry into the tribe of Benjamin. And once again, the tribe of Benjamin was rebuilt. So therefore, we celebrate the 15th day of Av, when this decree, this oath that the Jewish people made upon themselves to separate themselves from the other tribe of Benjamin, to be separate from them. So finally, this oath was destroyed, and there was a day on which the tribe of Benjamin was permitted to enter into the congregation of the Jewish people. Crazy story. Crazy story. Okay. Let's go to the next reason of the Gemara. The next reason is from Rabba Bar Chana. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Let me share the screen a second. So now we're coming to reason number 3 here in the order of the Gemara. This is not chronological, this order, by the way. So the third reason given over here is that this was the day on which the deaths of the Jews in the wilderness ceased. Okay, here's another story. Get ready for this story, my friends. Now, the beginning of the story, The beginning of the story is on Tisha B'Av, 39 years earlier. In the year 2449, after creation, the Jewish people sent spies to go to the land of Israel and see what's happening, to figure out the best way to enter the land of Israel. When the spies come back, instead of doing their job and describing what would be the best way to enter the land of Israel, instead, what do the spies do? They get a little carried away and they start giving their opinions, and they say, you won't be able to conquer the land. It's too big, it's too hard, it's too conquer, whatever. And the Jewish people begin to cry. They begin to cry and to weep and say, God has forsaken us. Why did he bring us out of Egypt to die in the desert? Blah, 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 blah. And God said, you're crying now for no reason. I'll give you a reason to cry. That's where every Jewish mother got that from. It's all plagiarized from God himself. I'll give you a reason to cry, right? Yeah, that's where it comes from Tisha B'Av. And yeah, she never said that? Oh, Esther said it. Oh, your father said it. Okay. So I'll give you a reason to cry. And that's what many of the calamities that happened to the Jewish people, including the destruction of the temple, both temples happened on Tisha B'Av. So what was the first thing that God said would happen on Tisha B'Av? That none of the men that were from the ages of 20 and older would be allowed to enter into the land of Israel. They would all die in the desert. Notice I said the men would die. The decree was only on the men, not the women. The women were not part of the sin. They never lost faith. The faith of women is stronger than men. But that's the decree was on the men that have been counted in the census of the army. That's why women weren't counted in the census, and they also weren't part of the decree of death. 39 years ago, every single year, on Tisha B'Av, on the day on which the Jewish people had lost their faith in God and had cried and wailed out for no reason, on that day, the Jewish people would dig their graves before they would go to sleep on the 9th day of Av. Every single Jewish man would dig a grave. And they would go to sleep, they would say Shema, they'd say the confession, the final prayers, and in the morning, 15,000 men wouldn't wake up. And they would bury those that had died. They were in their grave already. They would bury them. Another year would go by. And again, on Tisha B'Av the next year, they would dig their graves. And again, they would see who would die, etc. Till came the Tisha B'Av of the year 2487 of 83 after creation. No, I got that wrong. 87 after creation. That year, they dug their graves on Tisha B'Av. And guess what happened? Next morning, everyone's still alive. No one died. So they thought, we must have made a mistake. Obviously, we miscounted the moon. We miscounted the days of the month. We thought that yesterday was Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av. Obviously, we were wrong. Really? Tonight is the 9th day of Av. Okay. So that day, they all go again. They go to sleep in their graves. In the morning, they wake up and Everyone's alive. Do it again the next night, and the next night, and the next night, until comes the night of the 15th of Av, and they look up into the sky before they go to sleep, and what do they see? A full moon shining. And they knew that we didn't make a mistake. It's the 15th of the month already. The moon, what? Like tonight. The moon is shining in its full glory. Full glory. At that moment, they realized that the decree of God that they would not be allowed to enter the land of Israel had ended. Meaning, just to explain, there were people that were 20 years old 40 years earlier. They had been part of the census. And really, they should have died. But Hashem, in His compassion, accepted the truth of these people. And since they had now lived a full 20th year at the time of the sin, they were not yet, when they say over the age of 20 will die, meaning they had to be over the age of 20. So those men that were 20 and now had turned 60, God was kind, since they hadn't yet been over 20. They hadn't yet lived a full 20th year at the time of the sin of the spies, were not killed, and they should have been. They were part of the census. They were allowed to enter the land of Israel. And at that time that the Jews stopped dying, you know what else happened? God once again spoke to Moshe face to face. Because during the time of the sin, from when there was a decree on the people that they would die in the desert, there was a certain distance between God and Moshe because of the sinners that were living amongst the camp together with Moshe. Once all of the sinners had been killed and there was a purity once again amongst the camp of the Jewish people, and so to say the non-believers or the ones of small faith had been eradicated from the camp, once again God spoke to Moshe face to face, and therefore the 15th of Av became a day of tremendous joy and celebration for the Jewish people, because it was the day we finally realized that God had forgiven us for the sin of the spies, for our lack of faith, for our lack of trust in God, and that we would be able to enter into the land of Israel, and where God's presence was once again fully manifest and revealed among the Jewish people. Okay, so far so good? Okay, let us go now to the next reason. Reason number 4, or number 5. Reason number 4. Ula said, see Ula, this was the day on which King Hoshea, the son of Elah, canceled the guards that Yeravam, the son of Nevat, placed on the roads, so that the Jews would not ascend to Jerusalem for the pilgrim festivals of Pesach, Sukkot, and Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Let me explain this story, my friend. Every story needs explanation. Every single one. This story, if you remember, we've talked about, not too long ago, we talked about the civil war between the 10 kingdoms in the north of Israel and the kingdom of Yehuda, the kingdom of Judah, under the rule of the son of Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon. Okay? There was a civil war because of the taxes and all that. And I don't remember when, but not too long ago, I actually went through the whole history there. And the 10 kingdoms separated under the leadership of a man called Yeravam ben Nevat, who had been the tax collector, etc. And he realized there was a problem. The Jewish people have a mitzvah to be oile regel. By the holidays, they need to go lift up their feet literally and go to celebrate the holidays together with all of their brethren, all the Jewish people together in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple in Jerusalem. So what's going to happen? We're making a separate kingdom. I'm trying to keep the Jews of the 10 tribes separated from the influence of King Solomon, not him, his son, Rechavam. And now the Jews are going to travel up to the holidays. What's going to happen? They're going to reunite. And he felt a threat that the Jews going for the holidays was a threat to his kingdom. So what did he do? He separated. He put up borders and guards. And you're not allowed to go to the city of Jerusalem. And instead he built altars. He built two, not one golden calf, but 2 golden calves. And he built big, temples for the gods in the territory of the northern kingdom of Israel. So they would have where to go. You can't say you can't go there and not give them something else to do instead. So he created our own temples. You don't need to go to Jerusalem because we have our own temples where you can worship our own idols. And this is how idol worship became very, very famous and popular in the land of Israel. And for those who are worried that I'm freezing up, maybe go to my personal page, Rabbi Yankee Denberg. Hopefully it's better there. Okay. So that's the story. Okay. Separation of the total, like almost like North Korea, South Korea, you can't cross the border, Berlin Wall, separation, that the people that want to celebrate the holidays cannot go to Jerusalem. Until eventually there came a time when, one second, here we go. Eventually came a time, generations later, like 200 years later, there was a king called Hoshea, the son of Elah, who was not a righteous man. He was an idol worshiper himself, but he understood that Jews should be allowed to go to Jerusalem to pray. So he decided to open up the gates and let everyone do as they wished. I mean, he wasn't like one of the kings that was trying to do teshuvah and bring the Jews back to God. He was also worshiping idols. He was also a sinner. So I don't want to over glorify him, but he believed in freedom, which for kings was a pretty revolutionary idea. Most kings didn't believe in that. And he said, whoever wants to go up to Jerusalem, whoever wants to stay up north can stay north. Whoever wants to go down south to Jerusalem could go down south. And he opened up the roads. So because he canceled the guards of Yeravam, the son of Nevat, that were placed on the roads, it was a celebration for the Jews that for the holidays, they'll be allowed to go to Jerusalem to celebrate in the Beis Hamikdash in the temple. Okay. The next reason is a reason given by Rav Masna. This too, my friends, will require a lot of history. A lot of history. I'll condense it to one class. I know. I'm like on
It's like dirty laundry.
like dirty laundry.
Yes,
Yes.
Jewish dirty laundry.
Jewish dirty laundry. Okay. So, my friend, we come to the story of Beitar. Who knows the story of Beitar? No one? Beitar. It's a little bit similar to Masada, but it's not Masada, but it's a pretty cool story. Okay, let's try and do this short because I see we're going on time over here. But it's a fascinating story. So I'm saying the story is good it's an important story to know. It's an important story to know. After the Romans destroyed the second Beis Hamikdash, which is a very lengthy story. Again, there's a lot of history here. The Romans destroy the temple. They destroy Jerusalem. They raze it to the ground and all that. Jerusalem capta, all that. The Jewish people are not destroyed. And eventually begin to lead. It took a year or so. They regroup, they rearm, and they begin a rebellion against the Romans. And in fact, they're even able to liberate Jerusalem. And the leader, the general, the head of the Jewish people at this time is a man called Bar Kokhba. You heard about Kokhba, right? The name's familiar. Bar Kokhba. Bar Kokhba was actually a man called Shimon ben Koziba. That was his real name. And Rabbi Akiva, the famous Rabbi Akiva, who was killed by the Romans, he became a big fan and a big advocate for Bar Kokhba. He actually changed his name to Kokhba, meaning a Kochav is a shooting star. The prophecy of Mashiach describes a star, Darach Kocham Yaakov, that Bilam said, I see as not now, but in the future, a shooting star coming out of Jacob. He took them Koziba to be Kokhba, to be the shooting star, and he actually declared that Bar Kokhba is the Mashiach who is coming to liberate Jerusalem from the Romans, to bring in the final, the third temple. Okay? The time of tremendous war. It's a fascinating time. It's a terribly, terribly painful time of history. The Romans come back in with a huge army to quash the rebellion. They conquer back Jerusalem. That's when they raze it to the ground. I mean, the first time they destroyed the Temple Mount. Now they raise the Temple Mount. Doesn't exist anymore. Today, Temple Mount doesn't look like a mountain. You know what I'm saying? It's not such a temple. There used to be an actual mountain. It was raised. They literally destroyed that. There was no mountain anymore. The Western Wall was all that was left. The other walls were destroyed. The Western Wall, they couldn't destroy the Western Wall. I'm getting distracted and I shouldn't, but whatever. There's a lot to talk about. There's so much that happened at this time. And eventually they were driven out of Jerusalem and they came to one of the main fortresses where Bar Kokhba was in a place called Beitar. Beitar was an extremely, extremely well fortified encampment. People say that today there's a city called Beitar Yelit, and there's an Arab city called Beitar, which people say that's where the original Beitar was. Anyway, it was there that they were encamped. They built underground tunnels so that they were able to go in and out of the city to get food, to get water, whatever they needed. So they were very, very strong. And the Romans were fighting, and obviously the Romans sent in, I think Flavius was the general who came in with a huge, huge, mighty army. Obviously, Bar Kokhba knew that he couldn't fight him on the battlefield, but they kept them strategically, guerrilla warfare and attacking. Eventually, making a story short, the Romans eventually conquer Beitar, and kill every single person in Beitar, including Bar Kokhba, including all the main opposition to the Roman Empire fell then. It wasn't the final destruction. The final one with so many, many other cities that had to be conquered. It took them another, I think, 2 or 3 years, maybe more, 4 years to conquer the rest of Israel. The last fortress they conquered was Masada. But Masada was way south. It wasn't near Jerusalem. It was far away, and people didn't leave Masada. So it was there were Jews there. Eventually they besieged them and they killed them too. That was the very, very last stand of the Jews against the Roman Empire for 2,000 years. That's why it's such a historically and significant place in culture today. But as far as the actual war is concerned, the main army was in Beitar. And when Beitar was destroyed, the Romans were so hateful, so vindictive against the Jews that had caused them such difficulty by fighting them so much, that they decided not only had they killed each and every single person in Beitar, they decided that they were not going to allow them to be buried. They were not going to allow them to be buried. And for, I think it was 14 years, if I remember correctly, I'm going from memory now. I actually didn't look up the story before at all because it's, I think it was 14 years. I think it was 14 years, maybe 21 years. I don't remember. The bodies sat in the Jerusalem in the Israeli summers, Israeli heat. Thousands and thousands of bodies sat. And finally, so another whole fascinating story, if I'm not mistaken, is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He went, the famous Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he went, he cured the daughter of the Roman emperor's daughter, became crazy, a demon went inside the daughter, and he cured his daughter. Anyway, the Roman emperor said, you can have what you want, and one of his requests was to be allowed to bury the dead of Beitar. When they came into Beitar to bury the dead, I think it was 14 years after they had been killed, the bodies were still totally intact. They had not decomposed or rotted in any way. They looked like they had just been killed yesterday. And because of that, actually, the rabbis introduced an additional blessing in the Birchat HaMazon. In the blessing we make after the meal, the 6th parsha say, you should eat and you should be satisfied. You should bless Hashem your God for all the good He gave you. So actually, we used to have 3 blessings. And the rabbis instituted the 4th blessing called Hatov HaMeitiv in thanks to Hashem for allowing us to have this tremendous gift of being able to have the thousands of fighters, of Jews, of soldiers, of warriors that had fought the last stand of rebellion against the Romans to be given the proper kosher burial, and that their bodies are not decomposed and become smelly and putrid and whatever during those years that they were lying out unburied. So that is the 5th reason given why we are celebrating the beautiful day of Chamisha Asar B'Av, because it's the day on which the dead of Beitar were finally buried. Okay? Reason number 6. Ready, my friends? Who's still with me? Those of you online, you still with us? Stephanie, how are you? Guys, are you still, you're all holding on? We're going too fast? We're going like whiplash from like story to story? It's like all over the place a little, huh? You like it, huh? Okay. So, we did the days of the slain of Beitar being brought to burial, and now we come to the last reason given in the Gemara. Rabbah and Rav Yosef who both say, this was the day on which they stopped chopping down trees for the wood arrangement that burnt on the altar. Let me just explain very simply. In order to burn offerings, you need wood. However, the wood had to be well-treated wood. It couldn't be wood that was moldy and rotten and wet that would have worms inside it, because you're not allowed to bring a worm onto the altar. So you had to make sure that the wood that was brought was dry wood that didn't have any moldy or worms inside. And so therefore, they would only cut the wood until the 15th of Av. As it is taught, Rabbi Eliezer the Great says, from the 15th of Av onward, the strength of the sun grows weaker, and from this date they would not cut wood for the arrangement, as they would not be properly dry. And the fact is that from the 15th of Av, the sun starts to weaken in strength, meaning the 15th of Av is the hottest day of the year. It's the hottest day. I don't know the English word, the equinox or something. But after the 15th of Av is when the season starts, the nights start to get a little longer, the days start to get a little shorter, Shabbos starts to come in a little bit earlier, the night is longer, we have more time to learn, because learning is a time you can do at night without distraction, without being disrupted. You can learn more Torah. So the night gets longer. So anyway, this is why the last time they would stop chopping wood for the wood pile of the altar was on the 15th of Av. Amar Rav Menashia said, I'm going to tell you, my friends, why this is so special. Because it was a day that they stopped cutting the wood on the 15th of Av, they gave it a special name. They had a special name. What's the special name for the special day of the 15th of Av? Yom Tvar Magol, the day of the breaking of the axe. Got it? I'm just reading you the words of the Gemara. I got a special name for the special day, the day of the breaking of the axe. And so, my dear friend, I ask you, what is the celebration? What's the celebration? Let's go through these quickly, okay? I know I have only 15 minutes, but let's on the. You want to give me another cup of tea if you don't mind? Whatever you choose, any flavor is fine. So let's go through these stories. Every story we said, minus the last one, is pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. But are these stories that are like absolutely epic moments that deserve to become the greatest holiday, the greatest, happiest day for the Jewish people? No, let's go through the story. Let's go. What was the first story? For those of you who have the paper in front of you and those who have good memories, you can also chat. If you're watching me online, see the screen. Intermarriage to the tribe is allowed. Now, obviously, it's a good thing, right? We want to have as many opportunities as possible. So, yes, it's good to be able to, right? It's good to have marriages. It's opportunities. It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Is that the happiest thing that ever happened to the Jewish people? Best thing since sliced bread. Without a marriage, not only the tribe, we can marry out of the tribe. Okay. What's the next thing that happened? Tribe of Benjamin was allowed to enter the congregation of the Jewish people. Again, it's a good thing. There was a civil war between the Jewish people. And now finally God said, or the Jewish people themselves said, okay, we're going to find a way to allow the tribe of Benjamin to be rebuilt. Is that the happiest occasion for the Jewish people? Right? What's the next one? The day when the deaths of the Jews in the wilderness ceased. Now, obviously, that's a very happy occasion, right? The Jews stopped dying in the desert. That's true. But first of all, it didn't even really happen on the 15th of Av. It happened on the 9th of Av. But besides for that, God said it'll be a 40-year destruction, right? And was there a miracle that happened that they stopped dying? No. That group. But I'm saying the fact that they stopped, okay, God said they would die in the desert, and then they finished dying. In a way, it's almost a sad thing. For 40 years, Jews died. Again, we're happy they stopped dying. Next one. They canceled the guards that were blocking the Jews from going to the Pilgrim Festival. Again, so we have a terrible thing. Jews are dying. Okay, they stopped dying. Jews are not allowed to go to the temple, and now we're letting them go to the temple. It's nice. It's a good thing. We know how many times in Tanakh we had people being killed, and then they were allowed to Today the slain of the Beitar were brought to burial. Also, it's a big miracle. But yes, okay, Mazel Tov. Let's celebrate. What are we celebrating? Not the miraculous victory that the Jews won against the Romans. We're celebrating that they were killed. But when they were killed, God didn't let their bodies decompose. Wow, what a celebration. It's a day of a burial, for crying out loud. 15th of Av was the biggest mass burial. They buried thousands of people. So, yes, we're happy that we can bury them finally, instead of them being like hostages in Gaza. So when the hostages in Gaza that are sadly that have been killed, been murdered, are going to come home to a kosher burial, it will be a day of celebration. But it's going to be a bittersweet celebration. We'll be happy they can finally have a kosher burial and their families can finally have closure and peace. But it's still sad. It's not the happiest day for the Jewish people. True. And the last one, I don't understand this one at all. Someone help me out. So what's the celebration? Comes Rabbah and Rabbi Yosef. We have two rabbis combined over here. Not just one, but two rabbis. Rabbah, I'm going to share my screen again for those who are watching so you'll appreciate how much we need to understand what's going on over here. Rabbah and Rav Yosef, they come and say, what's the great celebration? That we have no holiday for the Jewish people as great as the holiday of the 15th of Av. What's the celebration? That on this day, they stop chopping down trees for the wood arrangement that burned on the altar. Vacation. The quota stopped. Whatever you cut, you cut. No more cutting trees. Hooray, we're free. Like the last day of school almost, yeah. If they would be like kids in school, the last day of school. But is it really a happy day, the last day of school? No, it's just like you're done. And in fact, what does it say? Because from the 15th of Av onward, the strength of the sun grows weaker. In fact, the nights grow longer. It's like, that's not a happy time. This is a miracle. And it gets even better. We're so excited. We're in such state of celebration on the fact that it's the last day of tree chopping. We have a special name for this day. The day of the breaking of the axe. Oh, the day of the break. So again, last day of school, I can see kids coming up with all kinds of names. The day the calendar ended, I don't know, right? The day the calendar stopped. But what does it mean that the rabbis are making like a whole celebration out of not chopping wood for the altar? You can't chop wood. Big simcha. We have a name for it, chopping the axe. And by the way, I have a question for you. Are you allowed to break an axe that you're not using anymore? If you finish chopping wood, Steve has a lot of tools, right? When you finish chopping a tree, what do you do with your axe? You break it because you're done chopping wood. You put it back in the garage till next time. Next year, they're going to chop wood again. What are they breaking the axe for? In fact, it's a sin. Bal tashchis means that you're not allowed to waste. So they take a perfectly good axe. Since I'm not going to cut any more wood this season, that's it. Break the axe over my knee. Celebration. The rabbis gave me a special day of breaking axes. We'll have a whole Olympics. Who can break an axe the best, the fastest? I'm sure the Jews can make a whole competition out of axe breaking. Who can make more splinters? Who can make a bigger mess? Who can, Okay. The day of breaking the axes. Why is that even a Jewish thing? How is it a Jewish thing to celebrate breaking a perfectly good axe because we stopped chopping wood because the days are not so hot anymore? And there might be a worm inside the wood, so we stopped. This is a celebration. Okay, anyway, good night, my friends. The class is over. I'll see you next week. No, I'm done. I'm going to go. I know you'll all come back because you got to understand what's going on in the story. It's a crazy story. So, how do we come to the happiest day? There's a very simple mathematical equation that we need to know that's a very fundamental rule in Judaism. But it's true in mathematics, it's true in physics, it's not just in Judaism, but it's true in Judaism. The greater something falls, the greater its ascent afterwards. In physics, right? You pull back an arrow, the further you pull it back, the further it's going to go. I believe I have some rubber bands in my drawer here. Yeah, the more you pull back a rubber band, here, see, look at this. I have a rubber band waiting. The more I pull back this rubber band, further. Uh-oh, he has one too. The further I have a rubber band fight. The further I pull back the rubber band, the further it will go. So even though I want to hit Steve, God forbid, but let's just pretend. Even though I want my rubber band to go that way, I have to pull it this way. I'm pulling it towards me to go that direction. And the further I need it to go, the more back I need to pull it. The lower down something falls, the greater it's bounced back up when it hits the bottom. The greater it's going to bounce back up afterwards. This is a true rule in life, and in the Torah and in the Jewish worldview, this idea is critical. That when we have descent, when we have darkness, when we have concealment means God is hidden. But the greater the darkness, the greater the light that's going to be afterwards. And there's a lot to explain on this, but it's a basic idea. The light that comes after darkness, the greater the darkness, the greater the light. How great will the light be after darkness? However dark it is, the greater the light will be afterwards. Just like the more you fell, the greater the rebound is going to be afterwards. And so this is why the Jewish people are compared to a moon. Another very famous and important idea to understand, and we've talked about this. We've already had a class once, maybe, 2 years ago. We talked about the moon and the cycles of the moon, why Jews are compared to the moon. But in 10 seconds, the most fundamental part of the idea that Jews are compared to the moon is because they come and go in cycles. In English, it's called we wax and wane. The moon is not consistent. The moon gets more and more bright and more bright. It gets stronger and stronger. And then it slowly starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it seems as if it's totally disappeared. It seems as if there's no more moon anymore. But then it's not gone. It's not gone. It's just been hidden from view. And the next night, once again, that moon starts to appear. And the next night it gets bigger. And the next night it gets bigger. And the next night it gets bigger until eventually it's once again at its full strength. Kaima Sihara Ba'ashlamusa are the words that describe how the moon has reached its full power, its full strength. And this is why on the Jewish calendar, the 15th of the month is always the most special day of the month. Because the 15th day of the month represents the fullness of the moon, which represents the fullness of the Jewish people. The Jewish people are compared to the moon. And when the moon is fullest, that's a reflection, a metaphor for a deeper truth that the Jewish people are also shining at our full strength, at our full beauty, and our full vigor. This is why many of the great Jewish holidays are on the 15th. Pesach, our exodus from Egypt, it's on the 15th of Pesach, of Nisan. And Sukkot, it's on the 15th of Tishrei. Right? The 15th. But, no, now you know. That's why you come to learn, right? So the 15th of the month is a very special day. You should know, in general, every month, the 15th of the month is a time for connection to tzaddikim. It's a time when there's spiritual energy. It's a time of connection. You should know that. It's a time when the moon is at its fullest, when there's special energy, special things that are felt in the 15th of the month. However, even though it's true that every month on the 15th of the month, you can connect the holy energy to tzaddikim, because the moon is at its full strength, where the Jewish people are at our fullest, power. Of all the 12 months of the year, on which month is the 15th of the month the greatest? On the month when the beginning of the month was the darkest. On the month of darkness that cannot be compared to any other month, which is the month of Av. From the very beginning of the month of Av, as we had it 2 weeks ago on Rosh Chodesh Menachem Av, is a time of total darkness. The 9 days, days of sadness, days of mourning, days of grief, days of spiritual darkness. After that, then you come to Tisha B'Av, the greatest of darkness, the most sad of all days. The rebound, the depth of despair is seemingly, I take that back. The depth of the fall, never despair. Jew never despairs. The depth of descent, this depth of falling seems so intense. The rebound of that is greater than any other month. And in fact, it's also because the sun physically is closest to the earth in the month of Av. It's closest to the equator. The earth is closest to the sun. So therefore, the moon too, when it shines, has the greatest shine, the greatest energy. Because the sun is closest to the moon at this time. So the darkness is the greatest darkness. But the shine afterwards is the greatest shine. And therefore, the energy of the 15th of Av is an energy of the rebirth after darkness. The energy of reconnecting to God that comes not just when things are good, not just when the sun is shining, but when there is darkness and we reconnect. The shine of the moon over the sun, which begins on the 15th of Av, which what happened on the 15th of Av, the Talmud says, the sun starts to shine less and the moon shines more. It's a month when the moon, representing the Jewish people, is at its very most powerful shine and glory. And now, my friends, I'm going to do this quickly, but if you go look through back, all the stories that we read, how the rabbis are describing to us the energy, the greatness, the power of the 15th of Av, you have to put them into the context of being the closure of the 9th of Av. Nothing exists in a vacuum. Remember this. Nothing exists in a vacuum. So Tisha, the Tu B'Av, Chamisha Asar B'Av, the 15th day of this month, not just the 15th day, or else it's like any month, the 15th. It's the 15th of the darkness of Tisha B'Av. And when we remember how dark things were, how the Jews were so separated, how the Jews went through moments of separation, that's what allows for the greatest integration and the greatest closeness. that comes from the descent, the ascent afterwards. So let's go through them quickly, my friends. What was the very first one? We said that the Jewish people were not allowed to marry from one tribe to the other tribe. Hold on, before that, I need an introduction. At its root of Tisha B'Av, before I go to the stories yet, one more point. It's connected. I'm saying it's explaining it. What's the root of Tisha B'Av? Why did God destroy our temples on Tisha B'Av? Why did God destroy the temples? Why did God make Tisha B'Av a day of darkness? The reason why we couldn't get along, the reason why Tisha B'Av became a day of darkness is because it was a day on which we disconnected ourselves from the land of Israel. When the spies came back from Israel and they said the land is too strong and the giants are too mighty and you will not be able to conquer the land, what happened at that moment? We despaired. And we said, I will never conquer it. Why did you take us out of Egypt to die in the desert, to be slaughtered by the giants? And we disconnected ourselves from the land that God had promised our forefathers to give to us. We disconnected ourselves. So the root of Tisha B'Av, the root of the destruction of us being exiled from our land of Israel, is because we ourselves disconnected ourselves from Israel. And you're going to look through the stories, you're going to see how these celebrations of the 15th of Av are days of reconnecting to the land. The first story we said, tribes were allowed to marry other tribes. What's the greatness of that? Why is that a holiday? Again, I'm going to go quickly. Because as long as I can't marry your tribe, there's a part of the land of Israel I can never have access to. I'm only limited to the area, so I can't get to your area. So your tribe is land that's off limits to me. So only 1/12 of the land of Israel really belongs to me. The rest is like I can be a tourist, I can go visit, but I can own it. So when the Jewish people allowed every tribe to marry every tribe, what happened at that moment? Every Jew was able to connect to any part of the land of Israel. The whole land became the land of every single Jew. Okay? What was the second story? Same thing with the tribe of Benjamin. What happened with Benjamin? They were almost destroyed. It was a time of darkness, a time where the tribe was almost diminished. The moon was so small, only 600 men were left alive from the entire tribe of Benjamin. It seemed like all is lost. And what happens? Rebirth. A tribe is reborn, it's rebuilt, and they come back stronger than ever. The next story, that the people in the desert stopped to die. Again, what was the reason that they were dying? Tisha B'Av, because they lost faith in God. They had lost that connection to Hashem. They lost that connection to Israel. When they stopped dying, that meant that they were going to enter the land of Israel and that God's presence could be felt amongst them again. So it's the closeness that comes after the separation. Same thing, the day on which King Hoshea canceled the guards that Yeravim ben Nevat had placed on the road so the people living in the northern kingdom of Israel should not be able to travel to Jerusalem for the holidays. He cancels those guards. And what's happening? The separation, the darkness is being canceled, being nullified. And Jews are once allowed, again, to celebrate the holidays together as one nation, united, together in unity and celebration. Correct? And finally brings us to the last story. The day on which they stopped chopping down trees for the wood. Oh, Beitar. Sorry. Beitar is an excellent, it's very important. Thank you for reminding me. I missed that. What happened by Beitar? On one hand, Beitar was such a sad story. On one hand, Beitar is a time of darkness when our last real hope of reclaiming and our independence in the land of Israel was destroyed. Again, even though there were last remnants that remained in Masada, etc., for another few years, but the army, Bar Kokhba, the leader of the revolt, was killed. Tens of thousands of Jews were left to rot and just perish, not only perish, their bodies should decompose and to smell in Beitar. And yet, the Jewish people at that time probably felt so abandoned, so alone, so neglected by God. How could God allow us to experience such darkness? And not only is our temple destroyed, but now Jerusalem is razed to the ground. Temple Mount is decimated. Beitar is decimated. Our people are decimated. Whoever is alive in Israel has been taken away as slaves. You think it's such darkness. And then all of a sudden the Jews are given permission to enter into Beitar. And what do they find? Tremendous miracle. That even at a time of darkness, God was still watching over us. Even at a time when you thought you were abandoned and God had forsaken you. It was concealment, yes, but never forsaken. Never forsaken. God forbid. Those bodies of those martyrs that had died fighting for the land of Israel were still being protected and preserved by God. Why they had to die is the plan of God. But God hadn't abandoned them. And all of a sudden the Jews were given such a boost of love from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from God Almighty. Yes, there's concealment. Yes, there's a plan where the Jews are going into exile. But don't feel like I've forgotten about you. Don't feel like I've abandoned you. It's like, for example, when Yosef was sold as a slave into Egypt, he had to go to Egypt. But it says that even though normally the people traveling them were selling tar, or the people that bought Yosef were selling spices. So Yosef was going as a slave, but God said, I didn't abandon you. I'm going to make sure when you go, you're going in a comfortable journey with people that sell spices where it smells good instead of traveling with, the bad smell of tar. The miracle of Beitar, where we said Hatov HaMeitiv, is such an amazing moment where the Jews were able to see the moon shining through the darkness of the night. Yes, it was night. Yes, we're in exile. Yes, we are suffering, but not abandoned. Not alone. God is with us, and God is still watching over the bodies of those soldiers that have lied alone and seemingly forgotten for so many years. They were not forgotten. God was watching them all this time. The bodies were still in perfect condition. This is the energy. This is the power. This is the beauty of what we're celebrating on the 15th day of the month, when we're seeing clearly that in the moon is the greatest rebirth that comes afterwards. And finally, we come to the last thing, which is the breaking of the cutting of the wood and the weakening of the strength of the sun. What does the sun represent? God is not the sun. The sun is a creation of God. Well, if the moon represents the Jews, what does the sun represent? The nations. The nations shine strong like the sun. We're the moon. From the 15th of Av, what's happening? The sun is getting weaker, which is why you can't cut wood anymore, because the sun is not as strong to dry the wood. And the enemies of the Jewish people are beginning to be diminished. And the moon, the nights are getting longer. The domain of the moon is getting longer. The celebration of the end of the chopping of the wood was a celebration of the fact that Galus, exile, a time when it seems that the sun is so much stronger than the moon, eventually begins to disappear to allow for the moon to shine in its full glory. This is what they were celebrating. And this is why Rav Menashe had to give it a special name. I'm going quickly. What was the special name he gave it? The day of the breaking of the axe. We need a name, a special celebration. Since when do Jews break axes? What does an axe represent? It's a weapon, very good. A weapon of destruction, of the breaking, of killing. What's it made out of? Metal. What are we allowed to do with metal in the temple? Nothing. When the temple was built, they were not allowed to use any metal to cut the stones of the temple. Why? Yeah, you're right. But let me say a little better. Metal is used to shorten. This is the words of the God to King David. I think to King David at the Gemara. Metal is used to shorten life, and the Mizbeach is meant to preserve life, to lengthen life, to give more life. So therefore, metal is the antithesis of the temple. You're not allowed to use metal in the temple. To cut the wood beforehand, you're allowed to use an axe to cut the wood pre-temple before it gets to the temple. But the axe is a necessary evil. You can't cut wood with your hand unless you're really good at karate. But for the most Jews, are not going to be able to do that. You know what I'm saying? Have to import a bunch of karate cue play. So Jews can't do that. So we need axes. But the axe represents exile. It represents the darkness that we live in a time when we have no choice. We need to use an axe. We need to use metal to cut the wood. But on the 15th of Av, we're breaking the axe. Metaphorically, what does that represent? The breaking of exile. The breaking of the forces of unholiness that are fighting us, that are concealing us. And the axe is being broken. And when the axe is broken, what do we have? Peace. Peace. And that's represented in the wood of the offering. I didn't say this point. The wood was used for offerings, an act of bringing the Jews together also. Because the wood was each family, different families, each one would donate the wood of their time, bring them all together. But the point is we broke the axe. We broke the axe. What does that mean? What does it mean? That now we're at a time where we don't need to have the metal anymore, the hatred, the separation of Jews, the separation of Sinai Schina, right, where we have an act where we fight people and break people, and instead, we're all together as one. And this is why the very, very end of the Tractate of Talmud, I didn't bring the copy, I knew we wouldn't have time, but I just can't hold myself back, but to describe how the Jews would get married. Marriage is a bringing together two halves, and it says that at that time there would be circles of dancing. And so too it says that when Mashiach will come, to be the tzaddikim will dance in a circle giving praise to Hashem. The unity, all the Jews coming together to dance, celebration with the coming of Mashiach, God willing, very, very soon, where we see the full shine of the moon of the Jewish people today on the 15th of the darkest month, the greatest shine of the moon. Good night, my friends, and l'chaim. Okay, thank you all for watching. I'm open to any questions or comments. Carmen, I'm glad that I think it wouldn't find the link. My personal page is Rabbi Yankee Denberg, rabbiyankee.denberg. Okay, next week, same time, same. I'm thinking. I didn't really, but I think I'm going to start doing Kings of Tanakh. Because lately we've been reading a lot of Tanakh, I'm saying some fascinating stuff here. And we basically, the parashas coming up don't have any characters really, because all Moshe repeated to the Jewish people. So last week I did classes on Elul and on. I'm thinking to start with King Shaul. Maybe next week won't be connected to the week per se. Just go Shaul HaMelech, King Saul, and then King David, and then King Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, and King Tzidkiyahu, and King Yeshayahu, and the 6 more Mondays till Rosh Hashanah, if I'm not mistaken. 6 weeks, so we can we'll do 6 kings the next 6 weeks. Sounds like a plan, yeah? Yeah. Before I disconnect. Okay, tomorrow. Thank you, Michelle. So tomorrow will be if you think I was excited tonight, this was just a warm-up for how much energy and passion I will have tomorrow night when we talk about Israel, because there's nothing that's more burning in the kishkes of a Jew, than what's going on in our Holy Land. And the class that I'll be teaching tomorrow night is extremely, extremely powerful, Tomorrow we're talking about the security of the Jewish people. If you want to join us, just send me an email or message me, mychabadcenter.org/JLI. Those that are watching online. mychabadcenter.org/JLI. This is going to be a really powerful class. We'll have dinner before at 7, but I'll be doing it on Zoom as well. It's $36 for the course. If someone needs a discount, they can ask me. And that's 2 Tuesdays. So it's next Tuesday till tomorrow. We're talking about the security of the land of Israel. And then next Tuesday, the 27th, we're talking about the PR battle that Israel has to face and how we can articulate, because obviously what we're doing till now hasn't worked. We obviously have a long way to go. So we'll talk about that. It's going to be very, very powerful, all from the Rebbe. That's tomorrow. Next Wednesday, not this Wednesday, next Wednesday, we'll be in City Hall. They changed the date on me. So next Wednesday, we're also doing our summer raffle. If you enjoyed these classes as much as I do, or even it's half as much as I do, to our summer raffle to support the beautiful work of Chabad, to support the classes and support everything else we are doing here at Chabad. That's mychabadcenter.org/raffle. Pretty easy to remember, right? mychabadcenter.org/raffle. Okay, that, my friend, is the story. And Michelle would like to remind you that the High Holiday seat is open. She's right. Guess what? Just go to mychabadcenter.org/High Holidays. High Holidays is one word, and there you see the seats, and you'll see the schedule, and you'll see the Rosh Hashanah dinner, and you'll see the Yizkor book, and you'll see a Kol Nidre pledge, and you'll see Shofar in the park, and I think everything is there. The whole... Yeah, what's more? There's the men's club, September 15th. The men's club is going to the Makar Museum. Yeah, and the women are having next culinary club is September 26th. And then we're going to the Ohel on September 22nd. And then we're going, me and Robert and Steve, and then who else are going to Israel? Okay, anyway, that's the story, my friends. Laila Tov, I think we covered it all.